long story. The good news is I'm not going to tell you all of it. But some 30 years ago, I found myself in charge of the Santa Barbara County Solid Waste Division, with management responsibility for 4 landfill sites, 1 on the south coast, 3 in the north county. The county solid waste transfer station near El Sueño Road, more commonly known as the dump, and a staff of 60 people, most of whom were truck drivers, heavy equipment operators, mechanics, with some supervisors, engineers, and administrative staff. It was and still is a public non-profit business funded by trash collection fees instead of taxes. This was a big change for me, coming from a planning department white-collar environment to a managed position in a blue-collar operation. I believed in Unitarian Universalist principles for much of my life, even long before I knew that Unitarian Universalism actually existed. But how could I apply liberal religious principles to what was basically a very conservative environment, both socially and politically? Our job was to make municipal solid waste, also known as trash, leave town and disappear. Make it go away and don't let it come back, and don't use any tax dollars. And you know, in a way, this was perfect, because one of the keys to doing a good job is knowing exactly what it is that you are supposed to do. And every single one of us knew our job. Make it go away, don't let it come back, don't use tax dollars. End of story. And as long as we did that, Wilson, the Board of Supervisors, would say, did it go away? Yes, it did. Is it going to come back? No, it won't. Did you use any tax dollars? No, we did not. Very good. Carry on. On the south coast, the trash collection companies like Marboard and anybody else that had stuff they wanted to get rid of would bring it to the transfer station near El Sueño Road, also known as the dump. And we would load it into big trucks and haul it out to a canyon near Gaviota, where we would bury it. Make it go away and don't let it come back. I became the keeper of away. And there was a lot of it to make go away. On average, there were nearly 1,000 tons per day being generated just on the south coast alone, between Gaviota and the Rincon. I spent a lot of time at the solid waste transfer station looking at the huge pile of stuff we moved every day. What is all of this? Well, obviously brush and wood waste was a big part of it, because you couldn't burn yard waste and leaves like they do back east, so we were hauling it all away and burying it in a landfill. There was also a lot of paper and cardboard, plenty of plastic, old tires, some food waste and some metal. There was demolition debris like drywall and scrap lumber. And yes, there was some unmentionable stuff too. Basically, everything imaginable. People would ask me, well, Wilson, what do you do for a living? And I would say, I'm in the commodities market. Wood, metal, plastics, rubber, you name it. Actually, I meant it. You see, burying all this stuff in a canyon along the Gaviota coast seemed environmentally disrespectful, and contrary to the Unitarian Universalist seventh principle, which is respect for the interdependent web of all of existence, of which we are a part. It was clear that yard waste and wood waste was a huge percentage of what we were dealing with, and much of this was brought in by landscaping firms and building contractors rather than mixed in with the trash and the garbage trucks. We set aside a separate area at the transfer station where the yard waste and wood waste material could be dumped. Then we brought in a huge wood chipper to grind it up. This reduced the volume of the material we had to haul to the landfill because brush can have a lot of volume and not much weight. And grinding the stuff up decreased the volume and it helped. The brush can have a lot of volume and not much weight, and grinding the stuff up helped to maximize the payload of our trucks. The end result was fewer truck trips going to the landfill, and the denser trash loads required less space in the landfill to cover. Then we found a power plant in the San Joaquin Valley that burned wood waste and agricultural waste to generate electricity. As many of us know all too well, yard waste and brush are a renewable resource. So we started sending our wood waste to the power plant and helped keep the lights on in Bakersfield. It came time to buy some new trucks. In the past, management and the accounting staff would decide on what trucks to buy based on fuel economy, reliability, ease of maintenance, and cost. The truck drivers would drive the trucks and the mechanics would fix them, but I decided to add one more element. I would personally ask each truck driver and each mechanic what they would like to see in the new trucks. They each received a letter from me. I told them to feel free to tell me whatever they would like to say or to say nothing at all. A response was not mandatory. But every single one of them took the opportunity to let me know what they thought was important in the truck, and more. In general, they were happy with the trucks that the county had been buying, but there were some common concerns that came up in many of their responses. The drivers wanted radios in their trucks so they could talk with their superiors and with one another about traffic, activity at the landfill, and any problems they might encounter on the road. They also wanted a small window at the base of the passenger side door of the truck so they could see if a car was immediately adjacent to them and out of the normal view that you would get from the rearview mirror. The mechanics wanted some particular tools and equipment that would allow them to work more efficiently and reduce maintenance costs. These seemed like very reasonable requests. We should have asked these guys before. And inexpensive requests at that, considering the overall cost of the trucks. So the answer to these particular requests was yes. And the drivers and mechanics knew I had listened to what they had told me. And then we installed radios and passenger door base windows in all of the existing trucks. It wasn't hard to do. And the morale soared. Unitarian Universalist principle number 1, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. At about this time, the city and county water agencies decided to offer rebates to property owners who would replace their high-flow toilets at 4 or more gallons per flush with low-flow toilets at 2.5 or less gallons per flush. It was cheaper to buy everybody new toilets than to acquire more water from faraway places. Before long, a wave of old toilets started to engulf the solid waste transfer station. Think about this. Every house, every apartment building, every school, all the dorms at UCSB, every office building, every hotel and motel, every commercial building. Let me tell you something. There are way more toilets than there are people in this town. And they're heavy. And they had to be hauled away. What could we do with these things? They certainly were not the usual recyclable material. porcelain with a little bit of metal, a little bit of plastic. The county road maintenance yard is next to the solid waste transfer station off El Sueño Road. And one of their paving guys there suggested that maybe we could break up the toilets into little pieces and use it as road base, like gravel, under new asphalt when we make roads. Well, we took a hammer to some of the toilets and broke them into pieces. The paving guy said it would make great road base, but we need to break it down into 3/8-inch little itty-bitty pieces and make sure no plastic or metal parts were in there. Well, we made some phone calls and we found a rock crushing operation in Oxnard that said they could probably crush toilets down to 3/8-inch size and remove metal and plastic parts with their screening apparatus, but they need at least 10,000 pounds of toilets to feed this giant crusher they have. And I said, sure, the worst thing that could happen was me sticking these guys with 5 tons of old toilets, right? Anyway, we get a big truck and we load up 5 tons of toilets and we're headed down Highway 101 to Oxnard. And the voice from the Board of Supervisors was in the back of my head. It said, Wilson, you can do anything you want as long as you make it go away. It won't come back if you don't use any tax dollars. The toilets go into this giant hopper at this rock crushing yard in Oxnard. And they turn this thing on, and the noise is unbelievable. There is 5 tons of porcelain being crushed, and it was amazing. Well, the initial crushing goes onto a conveyor belt, and then it comes off onto it goes into other crushers and screens that separate out the plastic and the metal and crush the porcelain down to 3/8-inch pieces. And at the end of the last conveyor belt is a perfect 5-ton tile of pure toilet road base. It worked. Well, we like the end product. It looks good. And so does the rock crushing guy. We cut a deal. We bring him the raw material and he will grind it. He keeps half of the crushed toilets to sell at his yard for road base, and we get to keep the other half to bring back to Santa Barbara for our own roads. It's a no-cash deal. UU principle number 2. Justice and equity in human relations. Much of the crushed toilet road base that we brought back from Oxnard is now underneath the intersection of Highway Out and Highway 154. Next time you travel over that, think about your old toilet being underneath you. Well, the news press, Santa Barbara News Press did a kind of cutesy story about county recycled old toilets. And the New York Times happened to pick this up off of the wire, and the New York Times did a story on how we were crushing old toilets, and cute story. But the next thing I know, I start getting phone calls from water agencies and landfill operations all across the United States who had started to encounter the same thing. They wanted to know how we did this. Then the Environmental Protection Agency heard about us, and we received an award from the administrator of the EPA, which was really nice, and a nice plaque from the County Supervisors Association of California for our innovative use of solid waste. And what happened was that over time, more and more toilets were replaced, and fewer toilets showed up at the transfer station. And eventually, the program disappeared. But while it lasted, we crushed a lot of toilets. The Painted Cave Fire began in the mountains above Goleta and quickly traveled downhill toward the transfer station. I could see it coming, powered by a strong sundowner wind, and I knew that it could and probably would reach us. I told everyone to evacuate, except for 6 who would stay behind and try to protect our workplace from the middle of our large concrete As long as there was water pressure, the 6 could fight whatever fire came their way in relative safety and hopefully save the place from the flames. I volunteered first to be one of the 6 to stay, and 5 of the workers soon followed. My own personal UU principle: do not ask others to do what you would not be willing to do yourself. The wind increased and the flames came toward us and then around us. Vehicles parked in the adjacent county road yard caught fire and their tires and gas tanks began to explode. We watched as many of the homes on El Sueño Road burned to the ground. We put out several fires near our concrete safe haven, but the wind and smoke and heat were incredible. And one of our maintenance buildings burned to the ground. We just couldn't save it. The wind drove the fire past us and toward Hope Ranch. And then the wind just died. It was dead calm. And the fire danger soon diminished. We had saved all our trucks. We had saved all of our heavy equipment. And we had saved our office building. We opened for business at 8 the next morning for the huge amount of debris we would receive because of the fire. And our shop building was soon rebuilt. I learned something. Show the workers that you care. Show that you are one with them. And even when it is dangerous, be one with them. Then when you leave, they will join you. There were no curbside recycling programs on the South Coast 30 years ago. If you wanted to recycle something, you took it to the recycling centers and they would accept the glass and newsprint and aluminum cans you brought them. I began working with the Community Environmental Council to increase recycling on the South Coast. We looked at curbside recycling programs in other areas and decided to try a test project here. We picked one neighborhood on the Mesa, one neighborhood in San Roque, your neighborhood, and one neighborhood near San Marcos High School for our test. We gave homeowners in each area 3 plastic boxes, one gray for newsprint, one blue for aluminum, and one green for glass. Remember those? To start with, the 3 neighborhoods received a letter signed by the mayor of Santa Barbara and the chair of the county board of supervisors. The letter said that a pilot recycling program was coming to their neighborhood beginning in 30 days, and the residents would be receiving boxes that could be placed at the curb in front of their residence for aluminum cans, newsprint, or glass containers that would be collected by the Community Environmental Council and the County of Santa Barbara for recycling. 2 weeks after this, we actually delivered the boxes to the test neighborhoods along with another letter saying, "Remember us? Please put your aluminum, glass, and newsprint in these containers that we have provided to you and place them at the curb in front of your residence, and we'll be back in 2 weeks to collect the recyclables." But we still weren't sure how this program would be accepted on the South Coast. The day before the test program began, Channel 3 did a story on the recycling program and showed the 3 boxes sitting at a curb in front of someone's house and with aluminum, newsprint, and glass in each one of the little boxes. But we still didn't know who would participate. The sun rose over the South Coast, and the lone truck we had assigned to pick up the material began its rounds in the first neighborhood. There, in front of nearly every house, was a mountain of newsprint, glass, and some aluminum. People had started to save up their recyclable materials when they had received the letter from the mayor and the chairman of the board of supervisors a month earlier. Then, in front of about every 5th house, would be a mountain of newspaper that somebody had in the garage and they were planning on taking it to the recycling center. But then they got a letter saying, "No, we're come by and pick it up." Anyway, the truck went through the first neighborhood and was completely full. The other neighborhoods had just as much stuff sitting at the curb, but the truck had to be empty before it could go on with its rounds, and we had not expected that. We would not be able to get everything picked up on the day we said we would with just that truck. So that was. Volvo station wagons, Ford Expeditions, and every other vehicle imaginable were running around these neighborhoods, grabbing material from the curb and hauling it to the transfer station where we could separate it all out in the coming days. We learned a lot. People on the South Coast will participate in curbside recycling. Just don't give them 30 days of advance. That curbside test program eventually evolved into the mechanized neighborhood recyclable collection program and also the mechanized trash collection program that we enjoy on the South Coast today. And the amount of municipal solid waste going to the canyon on the Gaviota coast, because of our work with the yard waste and also with recycled materials, it is less than half of what it was 30 years ago. It's been reduced. Today, the truck drivers at the transfer station are not just hauling trash to the landfill. They're hauling recyclables to processing facilities for recycling and ground-up wood waste to other locations. Those blue-collar workers are still driving the trucks and operating heavy equipment, but they know their job has changed, and now they are part of an environmental solution and not just part of a workforce needed to manage an environmental problem. They now know that they are part of a solution to a problem that faces the entire world and not just Santa Barbara County. And for me, that is part of UU Principle number 6.